you hear me now?
Yes, Kirk. Hi, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. You're on the road?
I am on the road. I went and saw the solar eclipse yesterday in Chester, Illinois, which is a little bit south of St. Louis. And I am in Canton, Ohio right now. And the first leg of what I'm calling the Hall of Fame tour. I'm going to go see the Football Hall of Fame, then Baseball Hall of Fame, and then Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A little bit of camping in the White Mountains.
Huh. Where's the Traders Hall of Fame?
You know, there is one. I don't know where it is. That's true. There is a Traders Hall of Fame.
Hey, buddy, let me ask you: where you were in Illinois, or where were you saw the eclipse? Was it total where you were?
Yeah, we were at 100% totality, right on the line.
Wow.
It was pretty neat. We got 2 minutes and 40 seconds of totality. Sunset, 360 degrees. You could look at the sun without glasses for those 2.5 minutes. Once it's not in totality, you have to wear glasses, though. Otherwise,
right.
It's pretty damaging.
I was disappointed, even though it wasn't totality. I went out, and I thought that everyone kept saying that there would be Coronas there, and I didn't even bring any water to drink because I thought there'd be plenty of Coronas.
Yeah, right. What are they?
Oh, Corona. You mean Corona was that circle around the sun?
Right. You showed up with a couple of lines, and you were disappointed.
A few, buddy. So, great to have you back, Kirk. And is this a new article? Oh, this goes back to July. Okay, so.
It goes back, but I'm going to tell you a story today when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. So this first article talks about the peak oil plateau. I first brought up this concept the June before the oil crash. And I was telling people in June of, would that be now, 2014?
Yeah.
Maybe 2015. I don't even remember anymore. But I first brought up the idea of the peak oil plateau. And to me, what that is when the supply and demand of oil balance. I'm not talking about peak oil demand. Peak oil demand will occur sometime in the 2020s. Hard to know exactly when. I suspect late in the 2020s. It's going to be a very long time before we see electric vehicles really start taking, away from the demand for oil. But
maybe we should set up an interview for them.
To do that, I tell you what, it is a monumental long-term trade. I'm going to give you guys a couple of shorter-term trades, however, that I think you're going to be excited about.
Okay.
So, right now, oil supply and demand are essentially in balance. However, there's a very large inventory, correct? And that's what's keeping prices down. And it's acting, in my opinion, a bit as like a child or somebody pressing down on a spring. And once they let go of that spring, it's going to jump up real hard.
Like pushing a beach ball underwater.
Exactly, and that's what's going on right now. And there's going to be a specific trigger, and I'm about as sure about this as I can get. I talk about the missing risk premium in oil in a different article that I'm showing on Seeking Alpha right now. And I wrote about this on Market Watch a while back as well. So
yeah, I was thinking about you now that Trump is considering saying that Iran is not complying. And I know this is, it seems like it's all leading up to your prediction.
Right. So let me tell you a story. I was at this place. I know this story, and what I'm telling you is pretty true as far as I can tell. And I'm going to fast forward here to something that really got me thinking about this again. I was recently at the annual meeting for a company, and I was at the bar of the hotel. I like to go to bars. It's a good place to meet people, to get a little bit oiled up, to get information from them. And I happened to have a gentleman sit down next to me who is one of the Republican Party kingmakers. I'm not going to say who it was, but This guy, if you watch House of Cards, this is the guy. This is the guy that makes people president or senator or governor.
Oh, he's like a kingmaker. He's like a kingmaker.
Absolutely. He sits down next to me. He orders a whiskey rye old fashioned, and I'm in Wisconsin, and I turn to him and I go, "You're not from around here." He looked at me. "How would you know that?" I said, "Because if you were from around here, it would have been a brandy old fashioned." And it kicked off a real good conversation. You know, he didn't spill the beans on anything, but I was able to just kind of needle in there a few times. And at one point I said, you know, a book that I'd really like to write would be from the standpoint of a fly on the wall for every room that Dick Cheney has ever been in. And he says to me, "I've known Dick Cheney 40 years. And, you know, I said, he says, why? And he says, he's the real deal. He's been involved in everything for 4 decades, 5 decades. Why him? I said, because Dick Cheney is the long game in America. He has been involved in all the things that, whether you like him or dislike him, he's been involved in many of the things that have gone on since the early 70s, maybe even a little bit before that. And included in that is the Saudi Arabia petrodollar deal. And all of your traders, I'm sure, are very aware of what the petrodollar is and the fact that it's probably going to become threatened in a not too distant future. So, you know,
it's going to be threatened. Is that what you said? It's going to be threatened?
Right. The petrodollar isn't going to remain the only currency that oil gets traded in much longer. And in fact,
so what are the Saudis going to depeg during this? Even though we're allies, probably against Iran, you think they would depeg?
I think early in the next decade, they repeg. I think that they switch over to the IMF basket and they start trading oil in a basket.
Like an SDR.
There's a special drawing rights, exactly. So when you take a look at the balance there, you can see what the impact on the dollar will be, right? So the yuan, you know, the renminbi, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's going to be based on a country's GDP to debt ratio or something, isn't it?
Along those lines, you know, who knows? The IMF changes their mind on things all the time. So, that's
like
just
a brave new world, buddy.
Right, absolutely. So you put that in the background, that there is a long game on oil. And when I was in college, I got to work with a great professor. I was on his research team. I was the only undergrad. You know, they were grooming me to be the next, you know, super grad student. I ended up getting married and making other decisions. But I got to spend a year and a half working with these folks and studying how the Middle East worked all the way back to the 1950s and the post-World War II era, right around World War II, up to the present. After the first Gulf War, there were, and here's the story, after the first Gulf War, there were a number of research teams around the country, probably hundreds, that were writing scenario papers on how the Middle East conflict was going to work out after the first Gulf War. And we have been getting oil from the Middle East for 2 reasons. The first reason was we needed it. So we cut the petrodollar deal. And in return, we protected Saudi Arabia from Iran. The wall between Saudi Arabia and Iran turned out to be Saddam Hussein. He was that wall. The reason we didn't topple him in the first Gulf War was because he was what kept Iran from encroaching on Saudi Arabia.
Sure, they fought a war with each other.
Absolutely. So the paper that we wrote, or I should say that I got to pick up books for and deliver coffee for and do some copy editing on. You know, I was not getting to do any of the serious research, but I was getting to read what they were doing as a team. And this paper, along with hundreds of other ones from around the country, go to the Pentagon, I presume through the Defense Intelligence Agency, and they studied his scenario papers. And it's not that this paper was the only one that said what it said. I'm sure there were dozens, if not hundreds, of other teams that wrote similar papers. And the story went like this. At some point, Iran is going to become an even bigger problem. This is back in 1992 that we're writing this. And ultimately, there has to be an end game with Iran because they want to be a regional power in the Middle East, and their ideology of converting everybody to their sect of Islam is just not going to fly. Recently, Mohammed bin Salman, the new crown prince, said as much when he said we can't negotiate with Iran because their philosophy is that they have to convert us and take us over and make us ready for the hidden Mahdi, which is
right, the Shia prophet.
Exactly. And so you have now, after 9/11, if you'll remember, and this all goes back to this paper, we predicted roughly how these things would happen. One of the predictions we made was that eventually the United States would have the technology to get the oil that we knew was here. We've known there was a lot of oil in the United States since the 1970s, but it was expensive to get. We didn't know how to get oil from the shale. We started to figure that out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And after 9/11, George W. Bush said, look, the war against terrorism is going to be a long war. You started to see a series of events unfold. The first one was the realization that, and you can study the report that came out, is that Iran was largely behind 9/11. They went through disaffected Saudis, funded them, influenced
So why did Bush pick the easy target?
Okay, so here's why he picked Iraq. At this point, I think, it's hard to know, George W. Bush wants Iran and Saudi Arabia to eventually get into a conflict. So you get rid of the wall between them. That's why they went after Saddam. They used the chemical weapons, which turned out did exist. Assad just used them against his own people. We just couldn't find them at the time. So it was an excuse to go into Iraq, because he wasn't going to say we want to set up chaos and war in the Middle East. He's not going to say that. What he says is there's WMDs in Iraq. The media falls for it. They don't find the WMDs. The media focuses over here on the WMDs. They never focus on the idea that, look, the destabilization in the Middle East now is going to pit Iran and Saudi Arabia against each other at some point as Iran's influence grows through Iraq. Iraq at this point is largely a satellite nation of Iran. You know, we have influence there, but Iran is more influential than we are, and we have deliberately allowed it to happen. This idea that this was an accident, that this was a mistake, it's wrong.
Okay, so you're saying that early withdrawal that caused a vacuum that led to ISIS, and basically Iran sat by for, I don't know, 5 years and watched us take out their enemy, the Sunnis, and that we deliberately left a vacuum for them to fill for this situation that's manifesting now.
So that Saudi Arabia and Iran would have to have a conflict. I mean, it would be ideal if they would negotiate, but you know that they're not going to. So there's going to be a conflict. You have to remember, we didn't kill all the Sunnis. Most of the Ba'athists who were in Saddam's army, they formed the backbone of ISIS at this point. They're truly not terribly ideological.
Yeah.
They are very, very good at propaganda, and they're angry. You know, they're angry more than they are religious. And they're using religion to bend people, which, you know, is a tried and true method going back to thousands of years of humanity, unfortunately. So flash forward to today. We are at a point now where the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia is, I'm not sure if you can quite say imminent, but it's closing in, and it's closing in quickly. There used to be an Arab, pan-Arab coalition that basically was stood against Israel, correct? Well,
right.
Now the pan-Arab coalition stands against Iran. You have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf Cooperative Nations, along with the United States, along with Israel, forming a coalition against Iran right now. It's been going on for 7, 8, 9, 10 months now. When would you have ever believed that Israel would be in a coalition with Egypt, with with Saudi Arabia, with Jordan, with the Gulf.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly, Dale. So, what does that mean for us? One, there's something bad that's going to happen in the Middle East from a moral standpoint. People are going to die, and if you choose to not make these trades, I understand, and it is the way of being an investor to be opportunistic. So I'm going to give you the opportunities that I see. Now, when this conflict in the Middle East flares, and I believe that the flashpoints will be something along the lines of Iran is caught in an incursion somewhere in Syria or Iraq. It probably won't be that serious, but it'll be played up to be serious. Maybe it has something to do with Yemen. So we're going to catch them red-handed at something, or we're going to catch them red enough-handed and call it red-handed. And that's the way it's going to go down. That is the way that it always goes down. So anybody who
all we have to do, Kirk, is send our Navy into the Straits of Hormuz, and they'll run into something.
Right. What is that, 20-25% of the oil on the planet?
You know, I mean, they're running into everything. All we have to do is place them there. They'll run into those patrol boats. But
right.
Okay. Do you have any kind of like time frame you think this might happen? Maybe if the market sells off 10-15%, or there's more heat on Trump with the investigations, that would be a pretty good distraction, don't you think?
Right. So, you know, Russia plays into this. Russia is normally a protector of Iran, but Vladimir Putin and the Russians do not like the Muslim Islamist influence in their own country, and really don't see Iran, the Ayatollah, and the mullahs as natural allies. I believe that when this conflict starts, Putin is going to say, you know what Iran just did is out of line, and we're going to stand down. I believe Russia will stand down. Why would they stand down? China's not going to care either. Okay. You know, China never goes beyond their own borders, really, with anything other than economics. They haven't sent troops anywhere. They don't believe in it. They don't want to be.
Why are they building the islands?
Those are buffers. You know, those are buffers. They believe that we've been incurring on their zone. You have to remember the psychology of nations. Russia and China have been invaded a number of times over the millennia, and they're paranoid about that. That is part of their culture. You know, in the United States, we have a different culture. You know, we have this very independent-minded, libertarian almost ideas that comes from us being revolutionary. So we look at warfare a little bit differently than they do. Warfare brought us our freedom. Warfare for the Russians and China suppressed them. So they want to just keep people out in general. Now, the communists have been clearly more expansionary in Russia, but it does all go back to providing a buffer around the motherland. So keep that in mind. You know, these are topics that I've studied pretty well. There's very smart people out there who say what I'm saying. So you don't necessarily look at people as enemies. You just look at them as having motive. And Russia is looking at Iran as a potential natural ally if they can get the Ayatollah and mullahs out of there, because the people of Iran, especially the city people, the folks who have, you know, first world jobs and education, you know, I'm very good friends with an Iranian.
Yeah, they want to be Americans, you young people.
They're right. Iran used to be a very Western country, and it's probably going to happen again. But remember, Russia's motive is that they want more expensive oil. Russia has been getting hurt very bad by the cheap oil.
Right.
And ultimately, they need that money because they have not diversified their economy. Saudi Arabia wants to diversify their economy too. They have a motivation for more expensive oil because they're going to IPO Saudi Aramco, and they want the extra half.
Hey, do you know when that's going to hit the market, Kirk? I've asked everybody.
It looks like it looks like late next year.
Okay.
Yeah, they put it off a little bit, but I always said second half of 2018, and I'll stick with that. So there's things that have to play out. Now, in America, we want more expensive oil because we're starting to export oil and natural gas. I was just in Southern Illinois. I was taking a look at, I forgot all about the oil down there. I'm staying at a hotel now in Canton with a whole bunch of pipe fitters that are building the pipeline from Michigan to, I believe, Pennsylvania to deliver oil. The oil industry in America has become very efficient, but it's also ramping up again in certain spots. The Gulf of Mexico just put out some leases at a discount to get the drillers in the Gulf of Mexico to go after the shallow water again. They want 2,000-foot wells, not 2 to 3 and 4 mile wells, because those super deep wells have to be mega projects. It's 8 years. The shallow wells, they can get up and running in under 6 months. They're cheaper. They're almost like offshore fracking when it comes to looking at it from an expense standpoint. So the United States is ramping up our oil industry still, even though it's in a much more controlled way. We still have supply going up. We're probably going to be able to pump out nearly 10 million barrels a day by the end of next year or the year after. So you take all these things, financial motivations, the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the fact that we have a president who seems, to me, hell-bent on getting to this war sooner than later, and they've been preparing for this war with Iran by making sure that we have the ability to withstand a setback in the supply of Middle Eastern oil. When this war happens, not only do you have the Straits of Hormuz that might be shut down for a while, and it would be less than 90 days. I suspect it would be less than a month. But that would be enough to impact inventory.
What did you say about less than a month? The conflict would last less than a month?
I do. I think the conflict will last less than a month. I think the Straits would get open pretty quick. But there is infrastructure in parts of Iran and Iraq, and oil wells, pipelines, a refinery. You could see a disruption of up to 4 million barrels a day of Middle Eastern oil when this war happens. The Straits of Hormuz would not stay closed long, but the flow of oil could conceivably drop up to 4 million barrels a day for up to 2 years.
Wow.
The supply of oil right now is roughly 97 million barrels. Demand is roughly not 97 million barrels. And the inventory is about 250 million barrels too many, so 250 million barrels. If you took away 4 million barrels a day, you could do the math. It only takes about, 70 days to get rid of the entire 5-year above the average oil inventory. We could go into shortage within 6 months. That would create a recession. So you have to take a look at these in multi-parts. They're preparing to withstand a shallow recession. And I'm pretty sure it's going to happen sooner than later. And it was going to happen whether Donald Trump won or whether Hillary Clinton won. They were both going to finish off Iran. I suspect Hillary would have waited until the year that she was supposed to get reelected, because she would have used it as a whole don't change horses in midstream. You're in a war, you have to let me play it out. And that's the way that, politicians have done it. Donald Trump, I do not see running for president again. I don't believe he likes the job. I don't believe he ever intended to run again. I believe, having watched what they've done in setting up a media company, I don't know if people understand this, but before Trump won, the Trump sons set up a media company because they figured they were going to lose. Well, they won, so the plan changed. But there's going to be a media company, Trump Media, I don't know what they'll call it. Once President Trump is no longer president, they're going to go to war with Breitbart. Breitbart, now that Steve Bannon has left, they've already said that they're going to go after the White House. You're going to see a whole new sort of independent populism come out of the Trump tribe. And whether you like them or don't like them, the fact is that they are probably in it for the money. I think probably you might see something come out with Russia about that with some of his people. I don't think President Trump had any connections to Russia on money, but what do I know? It could be. But you're going to see more people like Flynn who compromise themselves. So here's the trade. The trade is this. The war with Iran is coming. When does it come? I think next year. I think it'll be spring of next year. That's my guess. That's the soonest time frame. But it could be as late as the spring of 2020. So you've got this window, spring of 2018, the spring of 2020. What happens in a war with Iran? What currencies go up? You're going to have a flight to safety, correct? So here's where your currency traders can make a lot of money. There is this idea that the dollar is going to keep going down from a lot of people. I've watched some of your seminars. You're bumping into different levels.
You like them? You like them?
I like the dollar?
No.
Or the last guy?
The webinars.
Yeah. No, I'm a busy guy, but I try to flip into these once in a while. I'm the guest with the round head. So, yeah, I watch them on YouTube. Yeah, okay. The dollar is going to surge. The Swiss franc will surge. You'll have other currencies that surge. And if you guys can use your charts and read the news with regard to Iran, you may be able to make some amazing futures trades. So, I'm not the technical guy on that, but you should be aware that is where you're looking for the flashpoints. And if you can combine that knowledge with good technical expertise,
Yeah, technically right now, Kirk, the COT setup is pretty bearish. You have large specs, longer than they were when crude was at 100. You have commercials short. Maybe we get a chance to buy this market under 40 in the next several months.
Right. So I'll leave the currency trading to you. I'm a retail.
No, that's guy. Oil. That's oil.
Oh, right. The oil, right. So the COT. So with the oil, you can do the futures trade there too. Yeah. I screwed that trade up when I predicted the crash in oil. And I shorted a bunch of the oil companies. In particular, I shorted Rig and I shorted Seadrill because I knew that deep water was the target to get rid of long-term competition.
Right.
At this point, I'm looking for a futures trade where I can make a lot of money on currency and a lot of money on oil. The problem for me is I'm a retail guy. I don't have a lot of clients who use margin. So I have to go into the retail side of the market and use options on oil companies. And there are a number of oil companies where we'll be able to flip the switch because you're going to have this temporary situation where the dollar gets stronger and oil, because it'll start to strengthen as well, is going to go up. But then once the petrodollar ends, or is not really ending, but it'll be lessened, once the petrodollar is less strong, then you're going to see oil prices surge. So over the next 3 years, I would expect to see the dollar rise on this conflict, maybe the yen, the Swiss franc for sure. I think gold will probably get a fear rebound, but I don't put a lot of value in gold. I don't think you're going to see it at $2,000 or $3,000 an ounce or anything like that. Maybe $1,500, $1,600. There is. Does the
stock market like it for a while because the oils have been the weakest group?
I think that because the dollar will get stronger, most of the market will get beat up, right? Unless you're trading it from, a different shoreline. But you're going to see the oil stocks go up, and you're going to see, in particular, the highly leveraged oil stocks go up. There are oil companies out there, and I'll use Chesapeake. I have Chesapeake on my list, and it's a very speculative pick at this point. Chesapeake only survived past 2019 if the price of oil gets to about $60 a barrel and about $3.50 per million British thermal units of natural gas. So that's a company that if the price of oil surges, goes from being a potential bankruptcy candidate in 2019 to being worth a lot of money because they are still the second biggest natural gas producer, like 13th or something for oil. And they're very, very highly leveraged to a price change in the price of oil. Chesapeake is interesting because a lot of their hedges come off at the end of this year. I'm not so sure that they're going to re-hedge as much of their book. I think Chesapeake Energy, I know their management. I believe that Chesapeake Energy is going to gamble their survival next year on the price of oil going up. And if they have to declare bankruptcy in 2019, they'll shrug their shoulders, say we tried, and they'll turn the debt holders into the new shareholders.
Okay.
There's other companies that are less leveraged. I wrote an article about Encana. Encana's in a great spot right now. They have great acreage in the Permian Basin. Occidental Petroleum, I've mentioned, they're beaten up. You've got companies like Helmerich and Payne. And I know that as a futures trader, a margin guy, you may not look at these companies too much, but the reality is that some of these companies are leveraged so heavily to oil and currency.
Yeah, you could get a 10-banger out of them.
Right. You can use those as proxies.
Yeah. All right. So what's the best way for people to follow you, buddy? I know your Twitter handle, but if you want to show your blog, how they would get there. You write for Seeking Alpha.
I have switched from Seeking Alpha over to from Market Watch over to Seeking Alpha.
Okay.
So I would say just go on, find me on Seeking Alpha. I have a premium research service here that if you buy it for the next, I'm going to extend this, but I just opened this. I did it over the summer, dog days of summer. Probably only have a couple hundred people subscribing. I've got this for $250 a year right now if you're one of the founding members. And we have a list of 20 stocks. I'm doing more work on energy. But this trade, whenever it occurs, is going to make people rich. Bottom line, you have people in your room right now that are going to make such good currency and oil swing trades that they're going to turn $1,000 into $100,000. And you and I both have seen it happen. Somebody's going to make these great swing trades, and they're going to say, Dale, thanks a lot, I'm retired. And that's the way it's going to go down. For me, I love doing this, so I won't retire. But I expect even on the retail side to make between 400% and 500% on these trades, and maybe it'll be 1,000%.
Well, notes for Pinkert says 38 to 34 sometime in January. Buy it.
Yeah, that's when you're targeting it.
Yeah. Okay, so great update, and do you think there's a possibility it could start this winter? You don't think it's going to could start this year, huh?
Maybe. The month.
What makes you say spring? Because a lot of wars happen in October, at least because that's when people get all jazzed up with their high holidays in October.
In the Middle East, most wars actually start in the spring, and it has something to do with weather. It used to have something to do with weather. Has something to do with the holidays. I don't know that it's a strong enough correlation, but I don't see anything with Iran taking off this year. Could it?
Okay.
It absolutely could. If you can afford to carry the trade, then maybe you should do it. Most people don't have the capital to carry the trade. But if you have
I think maybe the charts will tell us. If we get to those numbers sooner rather than later, I would say most likely it's sooner. If it takes a while for them to get there, I think the markets will tell us, don't you?
They might.
The market will get hip to it before it happens. It's not going to be an overnight deal, do you think?
Correct. Yeah, I think you'll have several weeks to get your trades on. The Saudi Arabians bet against the price of oil a few months before they drove the price of oil down. Keep an eye on them, right? So, take a look at the way that the futures action moves, because there are big dark pools of money out there, and you know this, that will influence the way things go. I trade pivot points and reversals. I don't really follow a lot of trends because I know there's so many liars, cheaters, and thieves out there. You can follow trends if you're day trading, but like I said, I handle retail money, so I can't do that. But the technicals will tell you when the trend is going to reverse, right?
Yeah, I think so. We could count on that if there's anything to count on. So, Kirk, thank you, buddy. I hope you enjoy the rest of your road trip to all the halls.
I'm gonna go stand next to Brett Favre's statue and rub his shoulders or something.
No one will ever break his Ironman record.
No, I don't think so.
Consecutive games and it's so great, even though it's preseason, to see guys out there and hear the sportscasters again. Some people count their life by Christmases. I do it by football seasons.
There you go. Hey, I grew up watching the Packers when they were really bad.
Yeah.
When Don Majkowski, who was pretty good, got replaced by Brett Favre, I was like, who's this kid? And in like his second or third game, he had that iconic comeback against Cincinnati. I got to watch his entire career. And
nice.
He was a little reckless, but he carried that team for years. And he's just an amazing, amazing talent. And then we get blessed with Aaron Rodgers afterwards.
Yeah.
If I have
all I could say is better than being a Bear fan because we've never had a quarterback. So, well, buddy, enjoy
I'll never complain.
Enjoy and maybe give me a holler if you're starting to see some things that you want to share. And
I'm gonna keep track of you because you guys are one of my sources on the reversals.
Okay, buddy. I'm glad to serve. Our mission here is to build up and edify traders every day. I'm glad that you find some value stopping in and checking us out. And have a great trip, buddy. And I'll be glad when the adults get back from the Hamptons.
Yeah, right. All right. You take care. And hey, I would just reiterate, somebody in your room is going to have life-changing wealth on these trades. Okay,
I vote for that to be me.
Or a lot more than, it might be a lot of people.
No, I want to be selfish.
You want it all, huh? Dale wants it all.
It's my turn, guys, right? All right. All right. Thank you, Kirk, and thank you, F.A.C.E. See everyone tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome, Tom. You're welcome, Peter. Enjoy. Summer's waning. Enjoy it while you have it.